The remakes of the Johto games, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, introduced a new side mode, the Pokeathlon. The Pokeathlon is an Olympic-style competition where you enter a team of 3 Pokemon to compete. But what if we could only control one of our Pokemon? Is it still possible to win any of the courses if 2/3 of our team are completely useless? The first hurdle when attempting this is getting a Pokemon capable of winning each of the 5 courses by itself. But to do that, we need to know what makes a Pokemon good in the Pokeathlon. Each Pokemon has 5 performance stats, with the same names as the 5 courses: Speed, Power, Skill, Stamina, and Jump. In all 5 of these, a Pokemon will have a maximum potential of up to 5 stars. The only factor that affects just how high any of a given Pokemon's stats can go is the species of the Pokemon. The potential is shown by the total number of stars, including the outlines of stars, on the performance page of the Pokemon's summary screen. For instance, Mamoswine has a potential of 5 in Power and Stamina, 4 in Speed, 3 in Skill, but only a potential of 2 in Jump. This means that no matter what we do, it's impossible to have a Mamoswine with a jump stat higher than 2 stars, while Mamoswine's power stat can go as high as 5. As well as their maximum potential, each Pokemon species has a base number of stars in each performance stat. This is the number of stars a Pokemon species will have before any modifications. If a Pokemon has any of its species' base number of stars in any given stat, that's shown by the stars for that stat being a normal size and colour. Whereas big orange stars mean a Pokemon's stat is above its species' base value, and small dark stars mean the opposite. Back to Mamoswine, the base power stat for the Mamoswine species is 4, but our Mamoswine currently has 5 stars in its power stat, so the stars for power are big and orange, to show that its current power is more than the base amount for its species. We can also see the opposite in speed, where our Mamoswine has 1 star, which is less than the species base of 2, making the star appear small. Before we see what can increase or decrease the number of stars a Pokemon has in any of its stats, we first need to cover how the changes happen. To be more specific, the factors that affect a Pokemon's performance stats don't simply add or subtract stars, but instead apply modifier points. This table shows the amount of points needed to increase or decrease a performance stat by a certain number of stars. For example, if you want to get an increase of 2 stars in power, you would need between 40 and 79 modifier points in power specifically. So how do you get modifier points? There are 3 ways, but we'll start with the one that's the easiest to understand: the Pokemon's nature. A Pokemon can have one of 25 different natures, and each nature has a unique effect on a Pokemon's performance stats. Most natures give 35 modifier points to one stat and take 35 away from another. But this is different for 5 of the natures, specifically the ones called neutral natures. These are the natures that have no effect on a Pokemon's normal battling stats, not to be confused with the performance stats. But in regard to the Pokeathlon, these natures grant 10 modifier points to one stat and subtract 10 from another. This is where the next modifier comes in. The nature of your Pokemon and this second modifier are the only ones that are applied without any extra input from the player. So what is this second modifier? It's this formula, which we'll call the personality formula. To make it easier to understand, we'll break it down a bit. First, let's go over what the funny words and letters mean. Day is fairly simple, it's just the date of the month. So if it's the first of the month, you would replace day with the number 1, for instance. The next part that needs some clarification is P attribute. But to explain this, we need to understand personality values. A personality value is a randomly generated hidden value and is a 32-bit integer, meaning that it ranges from 32 zeros, which is the same as just 0, all the way up to 32 ones, which is the same as 4,294,000,000, 967,295. In Generation 4, this value affects many aspects of a Pokemon, such as its gender, ability, or whether it can be shiny. You might even recognise this number as being the one responsible for determining the patterns found on Spinder. In the personality formula, P attribute refers to one of the last 5 digits in the decimal version of the personality value, based on the stat being affected. For example, if a Pokemon had the highest possible personality value of 4,294,967,295, P attribute would be 6 for speed, 7 for jump, 2 for skill, 9 for stamina, and 5 for power. Now that we know what each part of the personality formula means, we can cover its effect as a whole. Looking at this section of the personality formula, mod 10 gives us the remainder of the input when dividing by 10, so is anywhere from 0 to 9. Since we then multiply by 2, the value becomes an even number from 0 to 18. Then subtracting 9 gives us an odd number from -9 to +9. This is the number of modifier points the formula gives us. Since the personality value of a Pokemon isn't visible to the player without external tools, the only way we can influence the result of the personality formula is by changing which day of the month we're playing the game. So back to the table from earlier, since the natures always give an amount of modifier points that's 5 away from the next threshold, even though the personality formula only provides a small number of modifier points, the result is fairly important, especially if we don't have the third modifier, which requires player input. We can see this with Docile Gyarados, which gets an increase to its stamina due to both its nature and the result from the personality formula for stamina being 5 or higher. Meanwhile, despite its docile nature also providing negative modifier points to the jump stat, the result of the personality formula, specifically for jump on this day, is not -5 or below, so we don't see a decrease in the number of stars in the jump stat. So to summarise what we've learned so far, we can gain stars in the stats we need by choosing a nature that gives us a bonus in that stat, and by playing on certain days of the month, we can also minimise the negative effects of the nature we choose, without losing the benefits. Returning from the original Johto games, Heart Gold and Soul Silver let the player collect apricorns. While they keep their original function of being used to acquire special Pokeballs, in the remakes they have another purpose as well. As you would expect, with the introduction of a sports competition side mode, we can juice up our Pokemon to give them an edge when competing. The Apra juice you make with apricorns in the Apra blender contributes by far the most modifier points out of any factors affecting a Pokemon's Pokeathlon stats. So how do these performance enhancing fruit balls work? Apra Juice has flavour stats, similar to Pokeblocks and Poffins from the other games in the series. The 5 flavours directly correspond to the performance stats of a Pokemon. Sweet Apra Juice contributes modifier points to speed, spicy to power, dry to skill, sour to stamina, and bitter to jump. There are 7 different colours of apricorn, 5 of which, being red, yellow, blue, green, and pink, will each increase one flavour by 4 points and decrease another flavour by 2 when added to the juice. Red adds 4 flavour points to spicy and takes 2 from sour. Yellow adds 4 to sour and takes 2 from dry. Blue adds 4 to dry but takes 2 from bitter. Green adds 4 to bitter but takes 2 from sweet, while pink adds 4 to sweet but takes 2 from spicy. There are 2 more colours of apricorn that function slightly differently to the others. The white apricorn subtracts 2 points from every flavour, while the black apricorn adds 2 to all of them instead. You might be wondering why we can't just add lots of black apricorns to the Apra blender and max out all of the stats. The total number of flavour points is capped out at 100, and for each of the 5 flavours you can reach a maximum of 63 flavour points. You also can't stack your doses of juice. When a Pokemon consumes some Apra juice, the effects will completely overwrite the effect of any previous app producers. So how do these flavour stats correspond to modifier points and the resulting performance stats of our Pokemon? It comes down to what the strongest 3 flavours are. The 2 strongest flavours both have a very simple formula to convert to modifier points. Whichever flavour in app produce is the strongest has its flavour points multiplied by 1.5 and then is given an additional 10 points. So for example, if we max out our spicy flavour with 63 points in spicy, it will contribute 63 times 1.5 plus 10, which is rounded down, resulting in 104 modifier points towards the Pokemon's power stat. Compared to the other modifiers, nature and the personality formula, this is a lot of points. But it's not just the strongest flavour that has an effect. Second strongest flavour gives modifier points equal to 1.5 times its flavour points as well. Where it gets more complicated is with the third strongest flavour. The conversion from flavour points to modifier points for the third strongest flavour brings in another new app-produced variable, mildness. Mildness is a stat that can range from 0 to 255. The lower the mildness is, the bigger the decrease the app-produced causes for the stat corresponding to the third strongest flavour. So having a higher mildness is always better. You can increase the mildness by waiting in-game days, with 1 day resulting in 10 more mildness. Or you can increase mildness by taking steps. A lot of steps. Every 100 steps increases the mildness by 1 point, but adding an apricorn into the Apra blender that increases a flavour that's not already one of the 2 strongest will decrease mildness by 10 points. So how exactly does the mildness affect the stat related to the third strongest flavour? The actual number of points that the third strongest flavour has doesn't actually matter, as it's the value of the 2 strongest ones that are used to calculate the decrease in modifier points for the stat corresponding to the third strongest flavour. More specifically, if the app produce has the maximum mildness of 255, the decrease in modifier points will be equal to 0.1 multiplied by the sum of the amount of flavour points of the 2 strongest flavours. If mildness is between 200 and 254, the multiplier is static at 0.2. And if mildness is lower than 200, then the lower the mildness is, the bigger the decrease is, with 0 mildness resulting in 100% of the sum of the 2 highest flavour points being subtracted. Since most of the Pokeathlon courses use all 5 stats across their respective 3 events, we'll need to carefully decide which stats will have to be buffed and debuffed by the app produce. But with app produce covered, we now know all of the possible modifiers for performance stats, so it's time to prepare our Pokemon. Because we'll be using a single Pokemon to take on every Pokeathlon course, we need to first choose a species with the potential to perform well in every kind of event. We'll be avoiding using any legendary Pokemon or mythical Pokemon if possible, as obtaining them and getting on with the right nature is more tedious than for other Pokemon. There are 2 non-legendary Pokemon with a potential of 5 stars in every stat, those being Sunkern and Ditto, but both of these have really bad base stats. So considering the fact that with all possible modifiers, we can only increase a maximum of 3 of our stats at any given time, 2 from app produce and a possible 3rd one from a Pokemon's nature, Sunkern and Ditto would be guaranteed to have 2 bad stats for every course. So we need to look for a Pokemon that might not have perfect potential, but instead has almost perfect potential, with at least a couple of high base stats. To narrow down our search, we can look at the different events and see which stats are the ones most often needed. In doing this, we can see that the jump stat is barely used outside of the jump course. We can fully invest our app-produce modifier points in jump for the jump course, but other than that, it's only used in 2 other events in total. The hurdle dash event in the speed course, and the ring drop event in the stamina course. And even then, in the hurdle dash event, the jump stat simply makes it easier to time the jumps, and does not necessarily give the Pokemon itself an advantage in the same way a stat like speed does. With this in mind, there may be a suitable Pokemon with lower base jump but generally good stats and potential. That Pokemon, which symbolises the pinnacle of athletic performance, is, of course, Muck. Even though it can't run backwards, Muck has exactly the sort of stats we need. While at first glance it may not look too great, it is important to notice that it has a potential of 5 stars in all stats other than power, where it has a potential of 4. As well as this, 2 of its base stats are equal to its maximum potential, meaning we will never need to invest Ampro-Juice into increasing power or stamina. This makes it possible to have 4 of our stats be at 4 stars or higher for all courses, though this will vary slightly depending on the effect of the personality formula. So with our Pokemon chosen, we next need to decide on its nature. Since Muck's power and stamina base stats are already the maximum it can achieve, we should pick a neutral nature that decreases one of them, as on most days we will see no decrease to the stat. This leaves us with 2 options, either Bashful, which gives -10 modifier points to power but +10 to jump, or Quirky, which gives -10 to stamina but +10 to skill. Since our base skill stat is only 1 star, compared to our base jump, which is 2 stars, we go with the Quirky nature. Considering the fact that Muck has a base jump stat of 2 stars, we could have actually gone with a nature that decreases jump, as jump is the only stat that can't go below 2 stars for most Pokemon. The only Pokemon that can have a jump stat of 1 star are Diglett and Dugtrio. This 1 star jump stat is special, as it makes the Pokemon unable to jump, which is why no other Pokemon are capable of reaching only 1 star, even with sufficient negative modifier points. The only reason we didn't choose a jump lowering nature is that we will be increasing our jump stat for the jump course, so the negative modifier points, although not being able to cause a decrease in our jump stat, will hamper the positive effects of Ampro-Juice on the jump stat. So having obtained a Muck with the right nature, we next need to decide which Pokemon will serve as the useless burden our Quirky pile of sludge will have to carry. Since they won't actually be doing anything, you might not think that the choice matters, but there are some mechanics that we will have to consider. First is the fact that there are bonus points which are given at the end of each course. One of these is called the challenge bonus. The way the challenge bonus is calculated is that it subtracts the sum of the base stats for your 3 team members from 75, and you receive that many points. This means that to maximise our chances of winning, we don't just need any Pokemon for Muck to carry, but we need the worst of the worst. And for that, there's a single Pokemon that stands below any other: Magikarp. While it has high potential in every stat, Magikarp's base stats are the single worst out of any Pokemon, with even its weird cousin Feebas having marginally better base stats. So we'll be having 2 Magikarp tag along as honorary members of the team. First up, we have the Speed course. As the name implies, this course features events that are focused on going fast, with the events being Hurdle Dash, Pennant Capture, and Relay Run. Speed is by far the most important stat we need to use our Ampro-Juice on, but the skill stat is also used in all 3 events in this course. With this in mind, we juice up our Muck in these stats, and give the Ampro-Juice stat decrease to jump. The first event is Hurdle Dash, and this is not the only course it appears in. This event requires the most precision in the speed course. The optimal way to clear it is to jump as close to the hurdles as possible. Successfully doing so provides your Pokemon with a speed boost that remains until your Pokemon either crashes into a hurdle or finishes the race. The way your points for this event are determined is by dividing 11,500 by the total time in seconds that it took for your 3 Pokemon to complete the event. Because of this, our Magikarp, which we can't interact with, crash into every hurdle, massively reducing the number of points we can receive. However, by using the rest of our Ampro-Juice on them before the course to boost their speed and skill, which affects the acceleration in this event, we can slightly reduce the time they take without ever interacting with them. There's also an effort bonus given to 1 Pokemon at the end of the course, which is 10 points given based on which Pokemon did the most of a certain action throughout all 3 events. One possible action that can be chosen for the bonus is Fail, which hitting every hurdle in this event would affect. Also, since our 2 Magikarp are both failing every hurdle, and should get the same number of fails in the other two events, they would tie for total fails, so if fails are chosen for the effort bonus, both of our Magikarp would receive the points, giving us a bonus of 20. With our two Magikarp finishing at the bottom, but our Muck getting a sub 30 second time, we're just about able to stay level with the other competitors. The next event is Pennant Capture. In this event, a Pokemon can pick up to 9 flags, before which they have to return to the start to deposit them, and then switch with the next Pokemon. Because of this, Magikarp will have to be sent out, and are unable to return without collecting at least 1 flag. This means that we can get a maximum of 9 flags, which is multiplied by 3, equating to a score of 27 for this event. Since the other teams can get anywhere from around 25 to 40 flags, meaning they score roughly 75 to 120 points from this event, the difference makes it impossible to win the speed course when only controlling Muck, even if we get lucky with bonuses. The last event of the speed course is Relay Run, but it also appears later in another course, so since Pennant Capture makes it impossible to win the speed course with just Muck, let's go on to the next course. The second course we take on is the Power Course. First up is Block Smash, which is one of the easiest events for this challenge. You have to tap on the blocks to smash them, but doing so increases the fatigue of your Pokemon. Hitting cracks in the blocks destroys multiple at once, and by consistently hitting these cracks, your Pokemon enters high tension mode, where every hit will destroy multiple blocks, and they're temporarily immune from fatigue. Our Muck's high skill stat helps with this, as the skill stat affects the size of the hitboxes of the cracks. Because of this high tension mode, we can solo the event with Muck. And since the number of points you get is the exact same as the number of blocks you break, for the first time, we can actually score considerably higher than our competitors. The second event is Circle Push. This one is much harder than the previous event. You're supposed to move all of your Pokemon so that they're standing in the point areas when each timer finishes, but since we can only move Muck, this gets quite difficult. We are able to use Muck to push our Magikarp around, but this isn't too consistent as the timers don't last long, and the opposing Pokemon can push our Pokemon out of the point zones. However, we can mitigate this slightly by targeting the Pokemon of the competitor that's scoring well and pushing them off of the platform. We can make it so that they can't score any points until they respawn after the current timer finishes. After a lot of attempts, we are able to score 20 points, which is multiplied by 3 to give our score for this event. While this is considerably lower than our competitors, the earlier Block Smash event balances this out. The last event of the Power Course is Goal Roll. This one is another one where we can leave our Magikarp alone, but even by doing nothing, they still serve a purpose. In Goal Roll, you gain a point by scoring a goal, but if you concede a goal, you lose a point instead. By leaving our Magikarp in their starting positions in front of our goal, they can block some incoming balls. Conceding goals early on doesn't actually matter, as conceding when you already have 0 points will not decrease your score. As the event progresses, the chance of a golden ball appearing increases, which gives 3 points when you score with it, but also subtracts 3 if it's used to score in your goal. The way the points relate to your overall score are different to any event so far. You get given a base score of 60 points, and receive an additional 5 for every point you have when the event finishes. Then you also get a bonus depending on how many competitors you got more points than, with bonuses of 10 for beating one competitor, 20 for 2, or 40 points if you score more than everyone else. Because of our Magikarp's low base stats, we get a challenge bonus of 50 points, giving us a slight edge over the other competitors. We receive the no miss bonus for Muck, and also one of our Magikarp, as it luckily did not ever get hit off the stage in Circle Push, or get knocked out in Goal Roll. Muck gets us the points leader bonus, which gives 20 points for the Pokemon that scored the most points across the entire course. And Muck also gets the effort bonus, which this time chose hits as its specified action. With a huge lead going out of the bonus point stage, and having won 2 of the events, we get an easy victory in the Power Course, and our first medal. Next we have the skill course. The first event is Snow Throw, which involves throwing snowballs at enemy Pokemon. Although it's slower, we are allowed to throw snowballs with just Muck. Each hit with the snowball gives us 1 point, and our total points at the end are multiplied by 3 to give us our score for this event. By spamming snowballs directly upwards, we're able to get a similar score to our opponents, and move on to the next event. We have our first repeat event, with Goal Roll appearing again. It goes just as well this time, and we then go on to the dreaded Pennant Capture. Yet again, this makes this course impossible to win, even if we get lucky with bonus points. But luckily this is the last time Pennant Capture appears, so we should have better luck with the remaining 2 courses. Our fourth course is the Stamina course. As a whole, this course is by far the easiest for the purposes of this challenge. We start off with Ring Drop, where Muck completely destroys any chance the opponents have at winning the course. In this event, you can tackle or jump on Pokemon to knock them away. If a tackle lands, you get 1 point, and if a jump hits another Pokemon, you get 2 points. Knocking a Pokemon off the platform gives you 10 points. And the only way to lose points is to run off the edge by yourself, which loses you 10 points. Falling off the edge switches out your Pokemon, but you can almost immediately switch to your next Pokemon again, so our Magikarp don't have to do anything. The score for this event is calculated by multiplying your points by 1.5, so with Muck getting us 132 points, we get a score of 198 for just this event, which is only 2 points below the cap of 200 points. This essentially secures our win for the Stamina course without needing to participate in the other 2 events, but let's see how high of a score we can get anyway. The second event is where we get to see Relay Run, which was the third event in the speed course. Your Pokemon have to complete laps of the track while avoiding any obstacles, but they get more fatigued the more they dash. However, we don't ever have to switch Muck out, as you can reduce your Pokemon's fatigue by waiting, meaning we can dash every few seconds. We finish 7 laps, which is multiplied by 10, giving us a score of 70 points. We then go to the last event, which is Block Smash again. Muck breaks 100 blocks, scoring an additional 100 points. As for the bonuses, as usual we get 50 from the challenge bonus. Both of our Magikarp get 10 points from the no miss bonus, as all they did was briefly appear in the Ring Drop, just to be switched out. Muck was the point leader again, and also got us the effort bonus for jumping, giving us a total of 100 bonus points. As a result, we have our most clear-cut victory yet, scoring over 200 points more than second place. Our final course to take on is the Jump course. But before we enter, we have to make some new attributes, which we focus on speed and jump. The first event is Lamp Jump, which involves launching your Pokemon up to hit the lamps, which give points if the lamp you hit is on. When you jump, the first lamp you hit gives 1 point and increases by 1 with each subsequent lamp hit before landing again, with it maxing out at 5 points for hitting the 5th lamp and beyond. Originally, I expected to have to use Diglett in this event since Diglett can't jump. This was so that we didn't accidentally launch anyone other than Muck. But it turns out that even if we launch Muck when it's right next to one of our Magikarp, only Muck gets launched, so we can keep using Magikarp for a better challenge bonus. We get 406 points, which is divided by 3.5 to give us a score of 116. The second event is Disc Catch. You get points by jumping and catching the discs, with the number of points depending on how close you are to the front of the platform. This event is quite easy, as we can just stay in the 3-point zone and spam jumps. The score you get from this event is calculated according to the red line on this graph, with X being the number of points you scored. We can see that as the number of points we score gets higher, each additional point scored gives less of an increase to our score. Because of the decreasing marginal rate, As long as we score around 30 to 40 points, we don't lose out on much. The last event brings us back to the beginning. We have a repeat of the hurdle dash, but this time, without the aptitude investment in skill for Mark, our initial acceleration is slower. However, since we don't hit any hurdles, the lack of acceleration generally doesn't cause any issues. With all events finished, we go on to our last reception of bonuses. As always, we get 50 points from the challenge bonus, and Mark also gets us the point leader bonus. With the event points added, we reach a total score of 390, beating second place by 99 points and winning us the jump medal. To conclude, we couldn't win all 5 courses, because of the way the pennant capture event requires your Pokemon to get at least one flag before switching. However, we were able to win a majority of the courses, which just goes to show. Teamwork is not important, or something. What was the point of doing this?